Renee makes $340,000 a year. She drives a leased Range Rover. Her twins are in a private school that costs $38,000 a year. Combined, she and her husband just closed on a house with a mortgage payment of $6,100 a month. Last week, her car needed an $1,100 repair. She put it on a credit card. She is not struggling, not in any way you'd recognize from the outside. She is by every visible measure one of the winners. Ask her to find $5,000 by tomorrow for anything unplanned, and she can't do it without selling something or leaning harder on a card that's already maxed. She has $4,000 in checking, that maxed out card, and a 401k she has not touched in 2 years because touching it would mean looking at it. This is not rare. This is not even unusual anymore. According to Goldman Sachs' most recent retirement survey, 41% of households earning between $300,000 and $500,000 say they're living paycheck to paycheck. 40% of households earning over $500,000 say the same thing. Read that again. 4 out of 10 people bringing in more money in a month than most Americans see in half a year, and they feel exactly as stretched as someone making a fraction of that. Somewhere along the way, most people picked up the same assumption. Get to 6 figures and the tightness goes away. Cross 200,000 and you relax. Hit $500,000 and money simply stops being a problem you think about. The data says the opposite is happening. This is not about income. There's a name for what Renee is caught in. Financial planners call it the high income poverty trap. The size of the paycheck is almost beside the point. What matters is what's left of it by the time the month is over, because this is the cycle for most people. Income goes up, spending goes up to match it, nothing gets set aside. And at 65, you're wondering what happened. And before you write this off as another lecture about spending too much, it isn't that. This isn't about anyone's choices being wrong. It's a pattern that catches people who never saw it coming because they assumed a bigger paycheck would just take care of itself. Here's the walkthrough. The 3 mistakes that build this trap, one piece at a time, and how you can tell if it's already caught you. Here's the part that makes it stranger than it sounds. The same Goldman survey found something almost nobody expects. People earning between $200,000 and $300,000 report a lower rate of paycheck to paycheck living than other income brackets, including people earning far more. Picture it as a line on a chart. It starts high on the left, drops to its lowest point somewhere around $200,000 to $300,000, then climbs almost as high as where it started. There's a narrow window where income has grown enough to matter, but the spending hasn't caught up yet to swallow it. Cross out of that window in either direction and the walls close back in. Bank of America looked at the same question a different way. They checked what share of people's income goes straight to necessities, with nothing left over for anything else. By that measure, about 1 in 5 households earning over $150,000 fits that description. So does almost a quarter of every household in the country, rich or not. So what changes once income crosses a certain point that wasn't there just below it? It isn't that these people are bad with numbers. Renee has an MBA. She reads her own investment statements. She could walk you through compound interest without blinking. None of that saved her because the trap was never about arithmetic. It's about psychology. Here's what actually happens. Income goes up and spending goes up right behind it, almost in lockstep. There's a name for this. It's called lifestyle inflation, and it moves so gradually that almost nobody catches it happening in real time. You've probably seen it in your own life, even if the numbers are smaller. A $15 lunch quietly becomes a $25 lunch. The reliable sedan becomes something leased and shinier. The apartment that fit becomes a bigger house with square footage nobody actually uses. It only adds up later. Nobody decides in one sitting to spend their entire raise. It happens in pieces small enough that each one feels harmless. Renee didn't wake up one day and choose a $6,000 mortgage payment. It built one approval at a time. The first year she cleared $300,000, she and her husband upgraded from a 2-bedroom rental to a 3-bedroom house because they could finally afford the extra room. Reasonable. The next year, her firm hosted a leadership off-site, and she noticed most of the other directors drove something newer than her 10-year-old sedan, so she leased the Range Rover. Reasonable. The year after that, her daughter's best friend enrolled in a private school with a strong art program, and Renee didn't want her daughter to be the one left behind. Also reasonable. Each choice on its own made sense. Nobody sat her down and asked what all three would cost together permanently every single month for the next 15 years. Add up just the base numbers, the $6,100 mortgage, a $950 car lease, and $38,000 in tuition spread across 12 months, and the three commitments alone run just over $10,200 a month. On a $340,000 income after taxes, that is roughly 53% of what actually lands in her account every month, gone to three things before groceries, before gas, before anything else in her life gets a turn. This is the part most people miss. Lifestyle inflation doesn't feel like inflation while it's happening. It feels like 11 separate good decisions. The trouble is, once something becomes routine, especially a luxury, going back doesn't feel like going back to normal. It feels like losing something. It's only when you add the 11 together that you see a person earning $340,000 a year with $4,000 in the bank. Now, here are the three mistakes high earners make that keep them living paycheck to paycheck, regardless of whether they're earning $300,000 or $500,000 or higher. The first mistake is that they look only at the sticker price and never calculate the full cost. Take just Renee's Range Rover and look past the lease payment itself, because the lease payment is only the first number, not the real one. Full coverage insurance on a car like this averages around $210 a month. Fuel for an engine this size runs close to $180 a month. A dealership maintenance schedule averages $200 a month. Registration tied to the vehicle's value adds another $75. None of these show up on the sticker, and none of them get mentioned in the moment the lease gets signed. Add them up, and they run close to $670 a month on top of the lease payment. Add that to the lease, and the true yearly cost of the car is $19,416, not the $11,400 the lease payment alone suggests. The private school runs the same way. $38,000 a year covers tuition. It does not cover the annual giving campaign the school quietly expects every family to participate in, the school trip that costs $800 in the spring, the uniforms that get replaced every year as the kids grow, or the tutoring that gets added on when a rigorous curriculum turns out to be, in fact, rigorous. Add those together, and you're looking at another $4,700 a year, quietly stacked on top of the $38,000 already budgeted. The sticker price was never the real price. It was the entry fee. I call it the cost of belonging, and it's more sneaky than you think. Part of why this happens so quietly is that nobody makes these upgrades in a vacuum anymore. It has gradually become the cost of belonging to a group. Every director at Renee's company posts the same vacations, the same kitchen renovations, the same weekend trips, and none of it comes with a caption explaining the debt sitting behind the photo. Goldman Sachs' own research names this directly, calling it keeping up with the Joneses, and the effect has only sharpened now that the comparison isn't the neighbor's driveway. It's an entire feed of people, 2 rungs up the ladder, edited down to only the best looking parts. Someone earning $340,000 a year, ahead of the vast majority of American households, can still end a scroll feeling behind, because the only income she's comparing herself to are the ones curated to look bigger. The irony of this mistake is that the research on people who actually built wealth tells a strange, almost backward story compared to how Renee lives. Ramsey Solutions surveyed over 10,000 millionaires and found that 94% of them live in neighborhoods nobody would look twice at. A separate study from Empower found that over 62% of everyday millionaires still comparison shop and stick to a budget, even after crossing 7 figures. About 60% live in homes worth less than $500,000. Warren Buffett still lives in the same house he bought in 1958 for $31,500. Here's the twist nobody expects. The people who actually build wealth almost never look like it, and the people who look wealthy often aren't. The director leasing a Range Rover with only $4,000 in savings looks richer than the electrician who drives a 10-year-old truck but has $2 million sitting in investments. The authors of the original study that documented this created two useful categories: prodigious accumulators of wealth and under accumulators of wealth. A $50,000 a year janitor can be more of a prodigious accumulator than a $600,000 a year doctor. The spending habit is what sorts people into one group or the other. The income has almost nothing to do with it. Their formula for figuring out where someone stands is simple. Take your age, multiply it by your pre-tax household income, then divide by 10. That number is roughly what your net worth should be if you're keeping pace with your income. Let's take the janitor and the doctor we just talked about. Both age 45. The janitor earning $50,000 a year should have a net worth around $225,000 to be keeping pace. The doctor earning $600,000 a year should have a net worth around $2,700,000. If the janitor actually has $300,000 saved, he's ahead of his own number, a prodigious accumulator of wealth. If the doctor only has $800,000 saved, she's a significant underaccumulator despite earning 12 times what he earns. Renee is 42. Her income is $340,000. By that formula, her net worth should sit around $1,428,000. It doesn't. Between retirement accounts, home equity, and what's sitting in checking, she's nowhere close. This is not a moral failing. It's a pattern. And once you know the formula, you can run it on your own numbers in about 10 seconds. That's mistake number one. Renee never ran the real numbers, not on the car, not on the school, and not on her own net worth. Now, the second mistake most people make is that they never define enough. Say Renee actually closed that gap. Say she hit the full $1,428,000. Would she finally feel secure? Here's where the psychology gets stranger. You'd expect a person to feel wealthier the more they accumulate. Often the opposite happens. According to Charles Schwab's most recent wealth survey, the average American now says it takes $839,000 in net worth just to feel financially comfortable and $2,300,000 to feel truly wealthy. The median American household, for a comparison, has a net worth of about $193,000. Renee's net worth doesn't come close to either target despite her income. And here's the part that traps people the longest. 63% of people in that same survey said it now feels like it takes more money to be considered wealthy than it did just 1 year earlier. The finish line moves faster than most people can run toward it. Someone hits a savings milestone and finds comfortable already costs more than they thought. They cross into six figures and find out wealthy got redefined without them. No number ever arrives feeling like enough because enough was never a fixed target to begin with. This isn't weakness. It's a moving goalpost, and you can't outrun a moving goalpost by earning more. You can only stop chasing it, decide what enough looks like for you, and hold that number no matter how loud everyone else gets. The real problem was never the number. It was never learning to define enough in the first place. And the third mistake high earners make is that they commit without ever calculating the cost of changing their mind, because in certain situations it genuinely feels impossible. Here's where it gets harder to walk back. A lot of what Renee spends money on isn't optional anymore. It only felt optional the day she signed up for it. Pulling her daughter out of private school mid-year would mean uprooting her right as she's building friendships in a new environment. Selling the Range Rover means eating an early termination fee on the lease that could run into the thousands. Moving to a smaller house means telling her husband, her kids, and everyone who watched them close on this place that it isn't working. Each of these choices is technically available to her. None of them feel available. This is the cost that never shows up in the moment of the purchase. The visible cost is the monthly payment. The hidden cost is what the commitment does to your ability to change your mind later. A family earning $85,000 might spend $1,500 a month on housing. Renee, earning $340,000, spends $6,100. Run the percentages and they land in almost the same place, just over 21% of income either way. Both feel equally locked in. The higher earner just has a more expensive version of the exact same trap. Part of the reason this happens so cleanly is that the system approving these purchases was never built to ask the right question. A mortgage lender looks at gross income and debt to income ratio. It does not ask what Renee is currently saving. It asks whether the math works on paper today, and if it does, it approves the loan. This is the false affordability test. Always remember, the bank will tell you what you can borrow. It will never tell you what you can actually afford once savings, insurance, maintenance, and the rest of your life get added back into the picture. The $6,100 mortgage payment is not the full cost of that house either. On a house in that price range, roughly $1 million, property tax alone runs close to $1,000 a month. Homeowners insurance adds another $300, and the 1% rule most lenders recommend, setting aside every year for maintenance, works out to close to $900 a month, whether anything actually breaks or not. Add all three to the mortgage payment, and the true monthly cost of that house is closer to $8,300, not $6,100. It's worth taking a specific look at location here too, because it's one of the major reasons high earners end up living paycheck to paycheck. Where you live changes the shape of this trap without changing the underlying math. Ask people in San Francisco what it takes to feel wealthy, and they'll tell you north of $5 million. Ask in Southern California, and it drops to around $3.5 million. Ask somewhere like Kansas City, and the number most people would give you is a fraction of either. Same country, same word, wildly different price tags. Renee lives in one of the expensive ones, where a decent house alone runs 7 figures, so her mortgage payment buys her roughly the same square footage of family earnings half her income gets for a third of the cost somewhere else. A colleague at her firm doing the same job out of a satellite office in a lower cost metro carries a mortgage payment under $3,000 a month for a comparable house, same title, same salary band, same company. A $3,000 a month difference in breathing room, decided entirely by a zip code. That kind of squeeze, created by all three mistakes, doesn't always show up as a missed bill. It shows up in two places: debt and percentage saved. First, the debt side of it. The credit card data on high earners tells a genuinely strange story. Total credit card debt in the United States crossed $1.3 trillion this year, the highest figure ever recorded. Households in the top 10% of earners are the least likely of any income group to carry a credit card balance from month to month. Only about 1 in 4 do. And yet that same group carries the highest average balance of any income bracket, over $11,000. Measured against income, that balance barely registers, well under 2% of what a household like Renee's brings home in a year. Measured against a household earning $30,000, a $4,000 balance is nearly 14% of annual income before a single other bill gets paid. Lower earners who carry a balance are usually financing groceries and gas, filling a gap before the next paycheck arrives. Higher earners are financing something else, a lifestyle that fits the income on paper but leaves no room for a surprise, and it isn't going away quietly. Balances are up 63% since the pandemic lows of 2021. 61% of people carrying a balance have now been in debt for at least a year, up from 53% just 2 years ago. Debt is turning into something people live with, not something they pay off. Now, the second place this squeeze shows up is in percentage saved. As of this year, the personal savings rate in the United States sits at around 3%, according to the Bureau of Economic Analysis. It wasn't always this low. Back in April of 2020, with nowhere to spend money and nowhere to go, that number spiked to almost 34%. For a few months, without even trying, the country found out what aggressive saving actually felt like. Then life reopened and that number is gone. A family earning $75,000 saving 3% puts away about $2,250 a year. A family earning $340,000 saving that same 3% puts away roughly $10,200 a year. The higher earner is saving more in raw dollars, but relative to the lifestyle they've built around that income, they are exactly as exposed as the lower earner. Now compare that to how people who actually reach seven figures got there. 79% built their wealth with no inheritance at all. Fewer than a third ever average $100,000 a year over their entire career. And yet nearly 3 out of 4 have never carried a credit card balance in their life. 44% spend more on experiences than on luxury goods, but they're selective and ruthless about cutting everywhere else. The average age they crossed $1 million in net worth was 49, after decades of the same unglamorous habit repeated on a schedule. 15% of Renee's income, invested at 7% over 20 years, would put her at roughly $2,237,000. Just the habit, repeated on schedule without drama. Run the difference forward, and the gap is not small. Renee saving 3% of her income at 7% over 20 years lands at $447,000. Saving 30% instead, same return, same 20 years, lands at $4,474,000. A person earning half of what Renee earns, $170,000, who saves 30%, ends up with $2,237,000 over that same 20 years, half the income, and still nearly 5 times what Renee gets by saving 3% on double the income. Here's what makes this expensive in a way that's hard to undo. Every year Renee goes without saving is a year of compounding she never gets back, no matter what she does afterward. Start at 42 instead of 32, and she's already given up 10 of the years when compounding does its best work. She cannot get those specific 10 years back. None of this is a math problem, it's a behavior problem. So let's break the behavior. Now, none of this is a case against nice things. Renee spending money was never the problem. The problem is that none of it, the Range Rover, the school, the house, was ever decided on purpose. She never calculated the full cost. She never decided what enough looked like. And she never priced in what it would cost her to change her mind before she said yes. So the fair question is simple. Would she choose all three again today at their full real cost, knowing what she knows now? Maybe the answer is yes. Maybe it isn't. Either way, that's worth deciding on purpose instead of by default. What breaks the trap is one audit with 3 parts, one for each mistake and one boring mechanical change after it. First, calculate the full cost, not just the payment. What's the real number on the car you're leasing? What's the real number on the house you're buying? Insurance, maintenance, every fee that never shows up on the sticker. None of it is optional just because it's invisible. Second, decide what enough actually looks like for you. In a real number, what car is enough? How many square feet of house is enough? Decide before you let everyone else's version of enough, especially the one showing up in your feed, decide it for you. Third, calculate the cost of changing your mind before you sign, not after. The termination fee, the friendships that would be disrupted, the conversation you'd have to have with everyone who watched you say yes. That's the audit. Renee ran hers and found the Range Rover, the school, and the house were choices she'd never actually revisited. She also found a streaming bundle she hadn't opened in 4 months, a gym membership unused since the new year, and a storage unit, $94 a month, holding furniture from an apartment she left 2 moves ago. Run the same 3 questions on your own life. You'll probably find more than you expect. The mechanical change is the automation principle, and it works at any income level. Trying to save whatever's left at the end of the month almost never works because spending expands to fill whatever's there. Flip the order, save first, live on what remains, and it works far more often because the money is gone from view before it ever feels spendable. This is also the thing that quietly fixes the debt and the savings rate we talked about earlier. Not because you're suddenly earning more, but because the money that used to disappear into a lifestyle now moves somewhere else first. For Renee, that's $68,000 a year moving out automatically, with $272,000 still left for a genuinely comfortable life. For you, the number will be different. The order won't be. At the start, we looked at a woman earning $340,000 a year with $4,000 to her name. 77% of Americans say they don't feel financially secure regardless of what they earn. 41% of households earning what Renee earns say they're living paycheck to paycheck. Her income bracket carries an $11,000 average credit card balance. The national savings rate sits at 3%. None of those numbers are about a lack of income. Everyone is about what happens to income after it lands. Two people can earn the exact same income and end up in completely different places 20 years from now. Not luck, not who earned more. Whoever decided on purpose how much of that paycheck they were going to keep before life decided it for them. Renee's paycheck will still arrive on the 15th and the last day of every month, same as always. What happens to it after is still hers to decide. That decision, made once and automated, is the entire difference between $4,000 in checking and $4 million 20 years from today.